So to begin with, to set the stage for this, we would like each of your family operations to just help us with kind of that high-level overview of your operation. Maybe, 3 to 4 minutes each about, think about fathers when you entered that operation, whether it was a family operation or when you purchased it. What were your, production practices, and to where you are now. And it's kind of a free forum. Whoever's holding the microphone is on the spotlight.
Is this on? I'm Barry Little, and I just got to let you folks know that just 48 hours ago I got kicked by a cow, and I'm heavily sedated on hydrocodone right now. But I really wanted to be here. This is one of my favorite events of the year. So I started farming in 1985 as a partner with my brother Donnie. My dad had just retired, and we worked together for an awful lot of years. And then when Eli was getting out of college, he really indicated that he wanted to be a farmer, and so we found a way for him to join. But back in the beginning, we thought we were conservation farmers, but we were really basically conventional tillage guys. We went through a ridge till phase and then a strip till phase. And Eli and I are on our way to trying to do everything that we learn at these conferences, which means the 5 principles and no more tillage.
And that hydrocodone means that you're going to give us the brutal truth, whether we're ready for it or not, right?
I don't know that there was ever a time that I thought I'd do anything different than farm and ranch. That was just what you were raised doing. I was the 4th generation in our family and the oldest son, and so that's just what I did. And as far as, we've always been a diversified farm ranch operation. My great-grandfather was, my grandfather was, my dad was, I am, and now Luke is. So, in Luke's case, I don't know that we ever talked. We did actually talk. Some of you know and some of you don't know that through the farm crisis of the 80s, I did start another business on the ranch, and that's an insurance business, which this will be my 40th year, which is my last year in that business, and because I'm retiring from it. But we made a decision, of which Luke was part of. He came back after he graduated from college in 2006 and was given the opportunity, is the insurance business something you're interested in? And it wasn't. But what it did is it gave me the opportunity. At that time, I felt that the farm ranch did not have enough income to feed 2 families, but with the insurance business, it was fine. And actually, it was the best alternative because the physical activity and the youth is more designed for somebody his age rather than mine. And so I continued in the insurance business, and Luke took over and expanded the farming and ranching operation. So that, in a nutshell, is what we've done and where we're at with it.
You young men aren't displaying any gray hairs that I can see currently, anyhow. Do you have any comments to throw in to add to what we've heard already, to kind of set the stage for any questions that our attendees might have for you?
Hello, everybody. My name is Alex Boekelheide. My dad, Mark, is under the weather here, so he wasn't able to attend today. And I told him I was nervous about him having a microphone anyway, so this all kind of worked out. But I'm fortunate enough to be a 5th-generation farmer on our farm, and to farm on land that has been in the family for that long, something that you could do hand in hand with your dad, instill values in your children. It's a way of life and a career that is very unique and impactful, and really drives home the point of why we need to be stewards of the land that we're operating on. Stewardship is one of the founding pillars of our farm. It's revolved around that, and we kind of fell into the corn and soybean easy button. And visually, just looking at the acres that we were managing, what was happening out there just wasn't aligning with what we said we were about. And it's one thing to say it, and then it's another thing to have your actions, back that up. So we started to make some changes. And what's neat about these conferences is you have people in all stages of their progression in soil health and the evolution of their farm. And we're very much in our infancy in that. 2021, I guess, is when we kind of really made the full shift to minimal disturbance, no-till, and then bringing diversity back onto the farm in terms of a small grain and cover crop. And have learned a lot just in those 4 years of production. So it's been fun, and it's really relit the fire for our entire team on the farm on why we're doing what we're doing. And it's more of a longer-term approach and a systems approach versus just an annual year-to-year. And very thankful for my dad, being a progressive-minded producer, allowing an idea to come from the next generation and being willing to adapt how we do things for the future success of the farm. That's where we're at.
Okay, you've had introductions. There we go. You know how this works. Get your hand in the air and the microphone comes.
Am I supposed to say something?
There's two other young guys.
Oh, okay. So I'm Luke Perman. So Lyle's my dad on the end. Just kind of to add a little more to where we're at now. So I graduated from SDSU in 2006, and with a range science degree, and came back full time after that, of course. Got married the following year, and my wife and kids are here, which you saw a minute ago. I was able to not just kind of slowly take over management of our family's property, but I was able to make some partnerships with some neighbors and some other folks that had maybe the land and the cattle, but not the ambition or the energy or interest, I should say, to do the day-to-day production stuff. And so that's allowed us to build to a scale where we're at now, and we can afford to have an employee. And so it's cow-calf is kind of our primary enterprise, and then we are running grass yearlings as well. And so that's our livestock side of things. We've done a little custom grazing with some sheep for the last few years, but moved away from that this year. We do have some farm ground, and one of those strategic and really important relationships is with Brett Huber. He's here. So I've got an ally when it comes to not just soil health on the pasture and the grazing acres, but also on the tillable acres. Can I still say tillable? Is there a different word that we can use besides cropland? Okay, it's like calling it Kleenex. Like it's a facial tissue, right? So, so our crop acres, we've and Brett and his family have been doing no-till for 25 years or a long time. So they've been doing a great job of that, and so it's exciting to have partners that are aligned with you on your philosophy of taking care of the land and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, I guess.
Hi, I'm Eli Little, Barry's son. Just for the record, he sent me to get another load of cattle before getting in that pen and getting kicked. So I was not around for that. Like he said, I joined the farm after I graduated from SDSU in 2013. Through high school and into college, it wasn't really obvious that I was going to be on the farm with my own operation because it didn't seem like there was room. And I found out quickly after college that there really wasn't room doing things conventionally, especially after an FSA loan officer told me I maybe shouldn't be a farmer. And he was right, I shouldn't be a conventional farmer. And thanks to learning about soil health and these conferences, listening to guys like Gabe Brown and Dwayne Beck. Now there is room on this farm, and we're growing, and we hope to be successful into the future, and we know we can be with soil health. So, thank you.
I suppose I'm going to be going at it from maybe a little emotionally or personally up front. It's a two-part question. The first one is for the successors. The second one is for the seniors. If I'm being completely honest, as a fifth-generation farmer myself, I find a lot of worry and anxiety about the idea of succeeding such a massive legacy. And I'm just wondering, how do you guys deal with that kind of anxiety or stress or pressure that you find yourselves under to succeed and not let the farm down? I myself am struggling to find my confidence that I could do this when my father eventually hands everything over, or would it help to you guys work with siblings maybe or not? I'm not sure what to do, so I'd like to have your takes on it. The second part of the question for the seniors is, are you guys anxious about how the farm is going to be run once you've completely let go, or that you're no longer around? If you guys deal with anxiety, and if you do, how do you cope?
It's a fair question. I tell you what I tell my wife: stop thinking about the future, think about right now. No, yeah, I hear where you're coming from. I hope he has the confidence that I will continue doing the right thing on the land, and he should know that we're under the same philosophy, and I guess there's just an assumption that things are going to keep going how they are. Of course, when he enrolls some land in 30-year CRP, making sure it's set up for 30 years, he'll tell me that. But otherwise, yeah, it's when you know it's working, there's a confidence in each other.
Got a couple things to add to that hopefully I'll help alleviate a little anxiety, at least it has for me. I would encourage you and your dad, and maybe you are, to start running the operation together hand in hand. When you can lean on his wisdom, when he can lean on your youthful energy, new ideas, and start to steer the ship together instead of being, here's the keys, I'm done, walk away type of scenario. Throughout our fathers' careers, they've been through a lot of ups and downs. Most of them probably went through the 80s and really had to hone in on their management skills. Now, we've never seen a financial crisis like that in our careers, so there's a ton of wisdom to learn there and take from that to help sharpen your financial understanding of your operation and just how to lead through those troubled waters at times. So lead together with your dad, run it together when you can lean on each other, so then when it's time for him to step back, maybe he circles back into more of a labor role and you're in the management seat, but he's still involved instead of part ways and do it together. And then lastly, on the anxiety part, sometimes I get that way coming to these meetings when there's so many strategies and things you can deploy. And it's like, wow, like how can I do all that? And you almost lock up and sometimes you don't do anything then. So to combat that, try to keep it simple, but surround yourself with great people and mentors, and this room is full of them. And take a couple things and try it and build on it every single year. And dialing it down to the simple things instead of trying to make it as complex as some of these guys have been able to do. Let that be a beacon of hope to get there, but realize you don't have to be to that extreme to make it work. Like for us, it was simply just, let's bring back no-till and continue to raise corn and soybeans in a no-till system. Now then, let's try to bring a small grain back into the rotation. And that's relatively simple. in the grand scheme of things, and then now start layering it. Well, now how can we pull inputs back at different things? So, but you don't do that alone. And when you surround yourself with great people in their ideas, the potential is endless. So don't try to saddle it all on yourself, because if you do, you're going to get overloaded. And I think Tom talked about that. When you feel overloaded, sometimes in your mental demeanor, your energy, everything just declines and progress just stops. So surround yourself with like-minded people and keep on the gas.
So with that, I suppose one of the mistakes I might have made was when I got into the farming operation, I just came back from college with a livestock degree. I bought the herd and pretty much took over the livestock part. But when it came to practical experience, I had next to none. I lean on my father for wisdom, but at the same time, it seems like my parents are expecting me to make all of the decisions immediately, as if I should know what's supposed to be going on, what's supposed to happening.
To be fair, his dad hates cattle. And his grandpa was the cattle person, and then he passed away about 4 or 5 years or 2 years after he came back. So my husband's not the cattle person. You're supposed to know it from college.
Shh, college was college. Anyway, should I have tried to gain more practical experience on that before taking over an entirety of decision making?
Sure. So my wife and I have 2 sets of twins. And when we had the first set, it was a little overwhelming and like, wow, they just hand us these 2 little people and expect us to know what to do with it. But I had some confidence in the fact that people have been having babies for quite a while. This is not a new innovation, that we're on the cutting edge of technology that we can now replicate ourselves. And they never had YouTube and peer mentor networks and stuff like that to learn how to raise their kids. And so like on a real basic level, like animal husbandry has been going on for thousands of years. You can't probably screw it up that bad. As long as, if you're going with like just kind of if I didn't know anything, we can probably figure this out without any help. Somehow we'd probably muddle through it. It might not be great, but I feel like, I hope that gives you a little bit of confidence that like, hey, you're not building rocket ships in your basement. You're taking care of animals, and this is something that we as humans can certainly do. There is no better teacher than actually getting your hands dirty. So while, you said you got an animal science degree or livestock production degree. So you have some of the basic like biology, just kind of fundamental stuff. Beyond that, I don't, unless you like would go work for somebody else, which I guess that would have been an option, possibly, maybe it wasn't. Just even having a good neighbor that you can kind of work together, because you always need extra help. The other guy probably always needs extra help. And just having a relationship like that would be, I would encourage you to seek that out. But no, I don't think you need it to move forward. The institutional knowledge of, like, how does this pasture work? Where's the water lines buried? Like, those are the things that you can't learn in school, you can't learn at your neighbor's place. And that's where, those things you just have to learn at home on your operation. As far as the anxiety about failing and stuff, there's a lot of, there's a lot of people talk about failure, and Thomas Edison said it. I didn't fail like 10,000 times. He tried to make a light bulb. He didn't fail 10,000 times. You just found 10,000 ways it wouldn't work. And really, you're in a conference in a room full of innovators that have all failed trying something new. And you can certainly make the argument many people have had, if you're not failing, you're not progressing. You're not trying something different. You're not going to, you're not going to succeed if you're not changing and not adapting and learning new things. So I guess I would say just don't be afraid of failure. And when it comes to making those changes and not having the anxiety and the fear of failure in like a new production thing that you're going to do, just research it to death. That's what I do. About 7 or 8 years ago, I made a fairly significant change in our genetics of our cattle. And if I didn't make 50 plus phone calls before I got on a plane and flew to Texas to go look at bulls, that was just what I did. I talked to everybody that I could find that knew anything about that, and I just asked them questions and had conversations, and that gave me the confidence. Talking to people that have been there and done that, either made the mistake or been successful at it, that helped me to form an idea of, okay, this is how this would look in my context, and it gave me confidence to go forward. So that's what's really great about just a culture like we have here with the soil health movement, is that it's very open source. I mean, everybody is willing to share what they've learned or what they've tried, and that can be overwhelming, I'll give you that. But finding somebody that's close to home, that's close, somewhat within, 20, 30 miles of your place would be ideal, but because they can understand your context better. But that's my encouragement to you. Don't be afraid to fail, though.
Want to talk about the cattle side. It seems like every success story I've ever listened to, it starts off with we stopped calving in February and March, and we started calving in May and June, and that's where you start, and that again has to do with context. Gabe Brown added the sixth principle of soil health, and that is context. So that's the first thing you need to think about when you look at all the other principles, is how is this going to work for me? How can cover crops work? You can't, in our area, which is just 10 miles south here, we can't plant a lot of cover crops in August, it doesn't make sense. So it's just got to work for you, but think about the principles when you're doing it.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Did you?
Just one last thing to add to that. There's times where you're going to do everything right, and nature's going to throw a curveball, and it's not going to work, or just something's going to happen, or it's going to fail. And I'm always reassured with the Bible talks about the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, and I might do everything right, but that's not the sole determiner of what I think is success. And there's always things to be learned through failure, and sometimes a lot more. The first year I dealt with a drought when I was making the decisions was pretty stressful, but man, I could have written a whole book on everything that I learned about what to do during a drought. And it's not just, yes, I need a destocking plan, but there's 100 other things that needed to be thought about. And that's, if you're looking at those things as opportunities to learn and grow, it's not a failure. It's just that, it's an opportunity.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you much. I'll repeat my question to the seniors in case they forgot. I apologize. That was a bad joke. My dad jokes are still in a work in progress. I've only been doing it for like a year. So, do you or have you had anxiety with bringing on your son onto your place, and ever have a doubt or a worry that things might not look the way you want it to once you're fully let go, or, heaven forbid, pass on earlier than you thought?
The short answer is yes. Eli and I took part in a stress survey relating to soil health, and just from taking the survey, we realized that the things that we do make it so we don't stress about the stuff that a lot of farmers stress about, because we know that the way that we're operating, we can make it through a drought or two here or there, and we can make it through a downturn in grain markets or a downturn in cattle markets, and we'll make it. About 5 years ago, Eli was getting a pretty good start, and I had done all I could to help him, and I went into the bank, and the banker said, "We got to have a meeting with your wife." And so they made my wife come in, and he tried to use her to convince me to stop being helpful. And for me, that was the whole point of life, was to pass things on to the next generation. And he said, "Aren't you afraid that if things keep going the way they are, all of the hard work you've done, you and your wife have done to make this farm successful, will be lost?" And I told him, "I haven't done anything. Everything's been in larger hands than mine." And our faith is very important to us. these meetings are very important for learning things, but our good friend Willie's sitting out here, and I get lots more out of the 2 times a week I see him than anything else.
We're not with that bank anymore.
You know, I have observed from my great-grandfather to my grandfather to my father to myself and now, of course, to my son that every generation that comes along is going to do things differently. And I think fathers, maybe Barry, has there ever been a time when you would have really liked to say something, but you just felt you needed to let Eli do it and let him learn? Maybe sometimes our sons make mistakes, and sometimes what they did really works, and then you're happy you didn't say something. But, you know, the difference between the master and the apprentice is the number of mistakes that we've made. And the bottom line is, I think Barry would say, we don't want to see our sons make the same mistakes we did. So there's a real fine line between micromanaging and telling our sons what to do and letting them do their thing and sometimes fail and sometimes do great things that make us proud. And so sometimes it isn't easy. But at the end of the day, it's what we're doing that is allowing it to work. And we're happy for it because the naysayers that are out there that are talking in our ear, I can remember 30 years ago, Luke brought it up, 30 years ago, Brett's father started no-tilling. Brett Huber is our farmer for us, started no-tilling. And back in the day, that wasn't very widely accepted. And had we listened to those people, and we'd still be conventional tilling. And if I go back to when I was a kid growing up, the Soil Conservation Service helped us drain our wetlands. The Game Fish and Parks helped us use ammonium nitrate, number 2 fuel oil, fuses and blasting caps to make explosives to blow our wetlands deeper so we had water for our wildlife in the summer. Well, just think if we'd still be doing those things, what the world would be like. I say that because we've got to have a degree of grace for those people that are leading the charge to do things differently. And at times, our sons are going to give us anxiety doing it. But guess what? If they're successful at it, their sons are going to give them anxiety. That's what makes me happy, is knowing that they're going to suffer the same as Barry and I are now. If they're doing things right and bringing their kids into the business, they'll know how we're feeling right now. But for the most part, we're really happy with what our next generation is doing and that they're not afraid to try new things because many times what they're trying they're going to be successful at.
I want to thank all of you guys very much from a personal standpoint. This is something that's been weighing on my heart. And to hear what you guys have to say, just that you guys share the same feelings as I do, just relieves so much stress from me. And thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Your questions don't have to be that impactful to receive attention. That was really, really great way to start this. I have a list of canned questions that we can ask these fellas, but we want yours more than the ones that we've prepared for. I've got Sean over here and Brian with microphones, so we've got the room fairly well covered. We'll keep that in our pocket for a second.
We should probably give him 2 books because through this conference he's asked the best questions. Every room I've been in, he's asked the most questions and the best questions. And
done.
Yep. And one thing I would say to add to what the wisdom on the stage had to say was, don't look back. I've heard you say it on a couple of your different questions is, should I have done? Don't worry about what you should have done. It's done. So just keep moving forward and don't forget what one man can do, another can do. And you'll get along fine. But you've got great questions. I know there's more questions in the room. Let's keep this thing rolling, you guys. There's one, Tans.
Brian's got it.
How did you, now Lyle, I know you said you had the crop insurance business, but how did you make room to support another family? That's always been a problem on our place, is that how do you make room? What do you do to add something to make it support another family?
I'll just tell you, I've got a friend, some of you know who Jerry Doan is, and he's a friend of mine that is north of us about 2 hours. And it would hold true for us too. We were fortunate that Luke did have that opportunity to come back without us, looking for something different. But there's not a business, not a farm ranch business that's represented in this room that could not find another way to stack an enterprise in their operation. Maybe you can't see it, but I'll guarantee you that there are people that could help you find something that can be. And it might not, in some cases it might require capital, but maybe not the huge capital outlay that you're thinking. But Jerry Doan told his family that you're welcome to come back, but you got to figure out how to make it work with what we've got. Bring something, bring an enterprise. So what do they have? They got agritourism, which means weddings, event center that they created. They've got a hunting. One of their sons had experience in brewing, and so they started a brewery. I'm just telling you, there's things you can do that another family member that wants to come back, you just have to be open-minded to change. And like I said, there's opportunity out there if you just know how to look for it.
For us, the answer was integration of livestock. When Eli started, I had about 120 cows, and we did things pretty conventionally. We put up a lot of hay. We grazed corn stalks in the fall a little bit, but we probably fed hay for 4 or 5 months of the year, grazed the rest of the year in pretty much set stock pastures. And then we began to do rotational grazing, and Eli's taken that down to moving the cattle every day. But we started raising cover crops after our small grain, and we started interseeding cover crop into our corn, and we've extended the grazing season. We just used up our last cover crop field last week, so we're going to have to start feeding some of our corn stalk bales and our other hay, but we're almost into February now. So also with the rotational grazing, we doubled our carrying capacity. So a cousin of mine, I was telling him about the dilemma that Eli wanted to be a farmer, there wasn't enough cash flow. And I said, what we really need is someone to own some cows that he gets paid to take care of. And my cousin said, well, I can do that. So he got his own herd of 120 cows. We ran the 2 herds together. And because we had saved so much money on feed, it became extremely profitable. And that's how we established 2 money streams for the farm, and then there's been other expansions since. But that was really the start of it.
Yeah, that, I guess another caveat, I don't think it's not necessarily gonna happen to everyone, but we've been kind of doing this soil health thing for a while now, and we've had neighbors and people notice, and since 2020, we've added 1,400 acres of cropland and pasture total that the landlord called us, said, hey, we like what you're doing. Can you do that on our land? And it's not going to be everybody's story, but you just got to start doing it and explain to the community and your neighbors how it's helpful for the environment, and good things are going to happen for you.
I'll kind of chime in on the livestock thing too. That's what's made it possible for me is a couple of neighbors who didn't have kids that wanted to come back and do livestock, or maybe didn't have any kids coming back at all, or just had a kid who wanted to just farm. And so that's been, the livestock has been my means to getting in. I'm starting to think about this too, as my kids, we got two 14-year-olds now, so really it's not that terribly far away to when I got to think about bringing them back in. And I thought about who has more marketable job skills, my 21-year-old recently graduated kid, or me at 50 with 30 years of experience. Maybe I'm the one that should go get a job in town because I can make more money and still act as a consultant, if you will, and help out whenever I'm needed on the ranch and turn it over to them. I don't know. Right now, it's just something that I'm starting to think about it and trying to get some different ideas. But the idea of me staying on as long as I can sit behind on the four-wheeler, maybe that's not the way I should be doing it. So, I mean, kind of did that backwards with my dad because he started selling insurance and he never quit. And I was able to come in and work. You know, I always had a full-time career with the ranch, but I'm not selling insurance. I'm full-time ranching, so we're in a little different situation than we were in 2006.
I had a question here, how to ask it that it's a benefit to everybody. So, like on our operation, I'm kind of working into the farming and that, and it surprises me looking at how it feels like my dad and my uncle are maybe resistant to new ideas, that looking back I'd taken for granted that they have a small grain occasionally in the rotation. They do cover crops after the small grain. And they have done that, and then now trying to, suggest new ideas, and maybe it more feels like I'm throwing ideas at a brick wall or something that's talking back to me or something. Not to paint it too darkly, but it's impressive to me to look back at what they have accepted and done, and it works. But it's also surprising to me that because of that, like, how are they not warmer to new ideas or to advancing some of these things? And how should I go about maybe warming them up to it without making like an antagonistic relationship?
Well, I'm kind of in a similar situation because Barry's brother is still kind of part of the operation, and it's tough where we have these ideas that we want to do, and he's still on some of the cropland side, and you just gotta prove it to him. You can't really push it on him. If we have acres that are more profitable and we can show them the hard evidence, that's all you can really do. Otherwise, it's just, again, just throwing stuff at a brick wall. So.
Yeah, I would emphasize that. Come to them with a plan. And an idea is where it starts, and then when you think back to Keith's speech and think it through thoroughly, if you come to them with a kind of a roadmap on the why behind you want to do that idea, that helps them invest into the idea. Relationships carry the freight. So when you can share that message with the people on your farming team, whether that's family, team members, landlords, whoever, it gets them invested on the mission that you're on, and then they naturally just become more open to some of the things that you're doing. I think that's what we've seen. And you also to give them a little grace and realize with the stage and where they're at in their career, the willingness and openness sometimes goes down just because they're not really wanting to take on any more risk at that stage, and that's real, and you got to validate that, and that's where coming to it with a map on showing increase in profitability or improve soil health to help increase the value of the land or returns from the land will help. I think that make them more of an open book to try new things.
One idea I was kind of presented with in a podcast or something talked about doing a pre-mortem on a new idea. So if we try this new thing and it does it and it fails, what would be the reasons that it would fail? And to think through like what could go wrong and what would we do if that happened is not something I'm good at naturally. I am a hopeless optimist, and there's a lot of times I would come to Dad with some idea and he would have three reasons, sometimes only one, and it was a really good one of why that wasn't going to work, and I'm like, oh, I never thought of that. And that caused some, stress when I had this great idea and Dad's just shooting me down every time. Well, it's because I hadn't thought it through. And I think if I would have brought to him that idea and said, well, I think this is a good idea. I know that these are some of the potential pitfalls. What do you think? Am I missing something here? And having like being open to the fact that this might not work and inviting their opinion on that might make them feel a little more validated that their opinion matters. And well, it's just good practice to think through why it wouldn't work.
I guess the thing I would tell you too is don't think big. Don't think, let's try this, and let's say you farm 2,000 acres and you want to try it on 1,000. Maybe you want to try it on 20. And I remember when the first no-till came into the area and some of the people that tried it. And after 1 year, they decided it didn't work. Well, the long-term benefits of no-till, you're not going to see that. It probably is going to take at least 5 years until you really start seeing a change. That was my observation with it. And I think to a certain extent you're going to find the same thing with the soil health movement, is that it really takes time to build that soil health. But some of the things that we've talked about by extending the grazing season, be careful about what you're going to introduce into for change. Because if it is something where you want to plant a cover crop following wheat, for example, and it's a dry fall and it doesn't come up very good, or it does come up and then it dries up, the results that you're going to see, the immediate results, are going to look like a failure. So make sure that when you're trying to bring something in, that you really are playing with something that shows immediate results, because if you fail, it might set back that quest to bring change in further than years down the road than what you'd like.
I would like to share what Reed's dad did. We had the exact same situation with Grandpa. And so instead of bringing it to him as an idea of, I want to change this in the operation, he would do his research, and then he would sit down and in casual conversation, he would start, hey, did you, here's what I'm seeing some people are doing. And then Grandpa would get curious about it. Then he would see an article in a magazine. And then the next thing you know, Grandpa's like, hey, we really should do this. And he somehow figured out how to make it Grandpa's idea. And just in general conversation. So.
Good job.
We got a question back here, guys.
Yeah, I had a question, and then Luke pretty much jumped the gun and I think addressed it pretty well, but maybe just go a little deeper. So, there's a lot of people that are here for whatever various stage they're in transition planning. In my case, 7 siblings, farm. I'm trying to kind of lead from behind on convincing my 85-year-old father that, we need to make some plans, right? And so then I also have kids that are in their early 20s, and Luke, your kids are a little younger, but amongst those of you guys up there, like, when would you start? I know that you're starting the informal process of thinking, right? You kind of addressed that already, Luke, but when's the appropriate time to start making some formal steps to create opportunity for your kids, regardless of what age they're at now? I mean, if you could look in the crystal ball, what are your thoughts on that, as to when to start really kind of setting it up so that they have the opportunity, whether they take advantage of it or not?
What do you mean by formal? Like legal or?
Yeah, I would say maybe legal, maybe I know that's kind of vague, but you know, trusts and things like that. There's always a lot of nuances to that, but I guess it's an open-ended question. I don't really know, but I know that at some point thoughts have to go into action, and when is that appropriate, or when?
I'm going to just step in, and I'm going to, before Luke gets a chance to talk. You asked Luke what was the first animals he owned? Chickens. And then he took his chicken money and he got sheep. And then he took his sheep money and he got cattle. And it's addiction that started at about 5 years of age. I don't think you can start too young, because it's a lot easier if you're losing money on chickens than if you don't start until they're 20 and they're losing it on cattle. So that mindset of involving them, and I know Luke is doing it now. His two younger boys have had started with a few chickens, but pigs and then sheep, and now they're in the sheep business. So I really think you can start that. I don't think there's an age that's too young that you can't start incorporating your children into learning to make business decisions. I've got a program. We've got our children in Tennessee, our grandchildren that are down there, and they've gotten grants from Grandpa. So what kind of grants do they get? Oh, so you wanna start in the goat business, Nigerian dwarf goats. Is that right, Garnet? There's a dwarf Nigerian goats. I don't remember how it is, but so they don't have the money for it, so they write a grant application to Grandpa explaining what they're going to do and how they're going to pay for them. And we've got an 11-year-old right now that has got a booming soap business from the milk that she gets from her Nigerian dwarf goats, selling that scented soap to the high-end market in Franklin, Tennessee, and is doing quite well with it. But it started because she had to write a paper explaining to me in detail how she was going to do that. So I don't think you can start too young. That's my theory.
I don't know if I have a very good answer for it, and part of that is, I mean, our kids are 14 and 10, and while 10 years seems like not that long on one hand and a long time on the other, I don't know what they're going to do with if all of them or none of them or one of them, or I don't know how many of them are going to say, yeah, I want to come back and join the family operation. And so I think there's a quote in the Ranching for Profit book that says, lack of opportunity is not a problem, lack of ideas is a problem. And so I think about that on one side, like if they want to come back, we're going to find a way to do that. We just have to have some ideas, and I have lots of ideas. Being an optimist, I have more ideas than, well, most of them are bad ideas, but I have a lot of ideas. So I'm just trying to think about how do I maintain flexibility so that if 4 of them are interested, we can figure out a way to do that. Or if none of them are interested, I'm not saddled with an operation that is too much for me to handle. And then what skills and experiences can I give them that are unique that they can't get somewhere else before they leave the house? And so I'm not answering your question at all, so I apologize for that. But especially on the legal side of it, I don't know anything about that. So I need to start learning soon. But yeah, no, right now it's more about the experiences and thinking of ideas that could turn into opportunities than it is doing anything that can't be reversed or it'd be hard to change.
Oh. Well, I was just going to say, my oldest kid is 11. I've got an 11-year-old daughter, a 7-year-old daughter, a 5-year-old daughter, and a 4-month-old son. So I'm guessing if I told the 3 daughters that the son gets everything, they're going to get very interested in the farm very quickly. But when Tom from Canada, I can't remember his last name, was talking about kind of ranching like a 12-year-old, I was like, well, my daughter's gonna be 12 in March. Is what I'm doing stuff that she'd be interested in, or are there things that she can do? So that's definitely in the back of my mind right now. So hopefully I can get her out in the pastures with me this summer if she's not too busy. But you want them to be kids, but you also want them to appreciate all the things they have and what's going on. So
I'll just add one piece to it. I have a 3-year-old son, so he's not quite to that stage yet, but I can speak from the experience that went for me with my dad and my parents. The threshold needs to ultimately come from you when you think they're ready to start taking on some of those things. And I think where that starts is exposing them to the principles of business. And the kind of get started is there an attraction to the operation side on whether that's running a grain cart or helping with cattle, doing some different things, and getting involved in the operations and how the job gets done. And then as it exposed me to different circumstances that start triggering questions, and then to start understanding, well, what does it take to run this operation on the back end? So then all of a sudden, if that desire is there to start understanding that, just how they say, start with an idea with a small, whether that's a portion of a field or just getting them involved in running your cost of production numbers and different things. Obviously, that maturity level has to be there to handle, exposure to those things and take it well. But those principles of business and seeing how decisions can drive profitability, that can become an addiction too, and start to just get the mind trained on how you think and approach problems and approach things with intention and plan. So I guess lean on yourself, but when your kids start asking you those questions and they're engaged, that might be your answer when it's time to start offloading and letting them take some stuff on themselves.
I applaud your guys' honesty up there, because this isn't normal questions that you would normally answer from an audience. I will get to a question, but I'm going to say I'm 58. I'm now the old guy on our operation. My dad died in 2020. Listen, if you're young, listen to the old guys. They will be crabby. They will not go along with your ideas. My father wanted to maintain control. Did that through an LLC. If this guy wanted to rent our farm, he could have rented it. My brother and myself, we did not have any control in the decision making of that. That said, and if you're the old guy, you have to look at your kid and decide, you know what? When my son was young, my wife asked me, where's John at? I don't know. Well, I think he's in the shop. Well, shouldn't you be over there? No. Couldn't he get hurt? Yes. What if he dropped the hammer on his foot? This is exactly how the conversation went. I said, he'll learn not to drop the hammer on his foot. Now, 10, 15 years went by. We're cleaning out the shop, going to pour concrete in the back half because we were too tight to do it all at one time. There is a 2x6 with one single caster wheel nailed to the bottom of it with shingle nails. I throw it out in the middle of the floor. I look at my son. I says, what the hell is that? That's my skateboard. It didn't work very well. Now, this kid in high school, I did not realize he was smart. You cattle guys in the room, crossbreeding works. My family proves that. My son can do things that I cannot do. It came from my wife's side of the family. Okay? That being said, when I got done, my work for my father, he paid us a wage. When I was in high school, end of high school, he says, this quarter of land's coming up for sale. I think you should buy it. Dumb kid. I didn't. Okay. So I bought it. I had the money in the bank. I paid my son a wage while he was in high school. Now, when I bought my quarter of ground, it was $350 an acre. Okay? My son goes to an auction, buys his first quarter ground, $5,500 an acre. I go out in the hallway with my wife and my son and myself, and I says, okay, everything has a life cycle. Grain commodity prices have life cycles. We as humans have life cycles. Land prices have life cycles. I said, if we bid one more time, we're going to own this piece of ground. I says, now 10 years ago, I bought a piece of ground at $5,300, and my wife was very unhappy. 10 years later, this is her idea. She says, I think we should buy it. It is a much better piece of ground. What I'm getting at is, where my question's going is to you old guys up there, and I don't know how this answer is. Farming is a crappy business to teach your son business. I used to work for the state. I had to work for a small CPA firm. People asked me 40 years ago, why are you leaving a good state job to come back to farm? It worked out. When I bought my first mixer wagon, this is stupid. I'm going to feed Dad's cows, Scott's cows, and my cows, but I'm not going to get paid for the mixer wagon. Whatever the hell reason happened, I own 6 mixer wagons now. Okay? So you old guys up there, how do you explain to the next generation? Because when my son bought that quarter ground, I looked at him and I says, I have no idea how you're going to pay for it. That has been said by every parent, grandparent since the beginning of time. I also looked at him and I says, how I'm going to pay for it, or how you're going to pay for it, isn't my concern. That's your concern. It also might be the cheapest land you'll ever buy. I do struggle because now it's time for me to, and and as a father and as a son, you have to have a little what the hell in you. Let's try something. Everybody in this room is trying something different. That's good. Because when you're trying something different, you'll screw something up, and when you screw it up, you'll learn. So here's my question. So as you sit there and look, do we have a healthy system of turning over this land? What's going to happen? I don't know. My father told me, he says, you don't need to worry about buying land when it's cheap. Because he says, if nobody else has any money, you will not have any either. Somehow along the line, when I bought that first quarter at $5,300 an acre, I reflected, and it's like, I'm glad I bought something at $400 an acre. At $400 an acre, it wouldn't cash flow. My father also told me, he says, land will never sell for it'll cash flow. The premium will go up and down, but it will never sell for what it cash flows. So how do you transition, because now I got infrastructure. I'd like to add acres. We're composting. I need some, and I'd like to go back because I also remember my dad saying, geez, I'm at 65 years old and I'm borrowing more money now than I ever have. And we looked at him as the sons and thinking, you're the logical one to buy it because you can. So with where we're at with grain prices, land prices, input prices, what do you find yourself saying to your next generation? Or, if you want to skip them, to the grandkids?
Okay, you had a lot to say there, and I was trying to keep up. As far as what do I say to the next generation is think long range. Don't think about the fact that in December the price of corn, or whenever it was, the price of corn got down to $3 for a little while. Think about the long-term trends, and what we concentrate on is being the low-cost producer, where everyone else is trying to, your input suppliers want you to buy the next best thing so they can make $1 off of you. What we want to do is find out how little we can buy and still make more dollars. So I'm extremely optimistic about the future of our operation, not because grain prices are good or the fact that cattle prices are excellent right now, but the fact that what we have learned at this sort of conference allows us to produce a crop at a lot lower cost than the average person. Supposedly, it costs, is it $900 an acre to grow corn? Okay, $1,200 an acre to grow corn in Illinois. I just have no idea how you can spend that much money on a corn crop, because even if your land cost is $400 an acre, you're just throwing away so much money on so many things that are unnecessary if you have a healthy soil that is working for you, so that your operation works on a linear system, a cyclical system instead of a linear system. It's not about put this stuff in, put that stuff in, and then you get an output out of it. It's about let the cycle work itself and just do the things you need to do to make sure the cycle works correctly.
So I just had my 70th birthday, and in my lifetime, I've never heard anybody say, that land is so cheap, you need to buy it. It's always been too high, always. Some of the first land that my wife Garnet and I bought, her father told us, it's too much, it'll never work, and that was $125 an acre. And now that same ground is probably worth $2,000, $2,500 an acre. So it's just an old story. A friend of mine by the name of Burke Tykert, some of you know who Burke is. I called him. He was, for those of you that don't know, he managed a Deseret Cattle Company, which is the Mormon Church's operation, and they probably only had 25,000 cows at the time when he was there. I think there may be a 40,000 now. But I called him to find out what formula did he use, because many times when he speaks, it's always about economics. And I said, so what formula do you use? And I kind of knew this statistic. If you study back to trends over the last 100 years, there's very few places that you could have invested money in the last 100 years that have performed better than land. So I just figured, Burke, you'll know it. And he said, yeah, it's a pretty simple formula. And well, what I was expecting him to say is something like the square root of the coefficient of the average steer price over the last 7 years, or some complicated formula. But no, it is really simple. Can you make the payment? And if you can figure out a way to put some money down and make the annual payment, it's the best long-term investment, like Barry talked about. The best long-term investment you can have is land. And so we've been fortunate. We've had opportunities, and we've been able to do those kind of things. But that would be my answer if somebody asked me how much to pay. Can you make the payment?
All right, next question right here, guys.
This one's kind of throwing a little wrench into all of them. Lyle's family and stuff had their legacy here this morning, which was kind of eye-opening a little bit as far as leasing it all to the son. How has the other two families, what have they done as far as getting it so that it works for the son instead of just paying wages, start getting involved in? And what does that next generation like Luke and everybody as far as know how do they feel as far as a lease and something like Luke and Lyle did? Or what is the other generations doing as far as bringing a legacy out? Because I'm getting to the age where up there close to Lyle, where we need to start getting to the next generation, and then they can decide what they're doing with it to the next generation.
I thought I'd talk too much. So tell me your question one more time very quickly.
The legacy with the Hermans, they said how they did it as far as leasing everything back to the next generation, and that's how they get paid. So they've got some equity to retire on. What are you doing, Barry, and what is the other family doing as far as how are you, and what does that next generation think of doing that so they can get more control?
So back in 1984, my father retired, and he had managed he was 62, but he had managed to become debt-free that year, which was his goal, so that he could retire and rent his land to his sons and live off of that. Well, I'm going the total opposite direction. In order to make our farm successful, I went and borrowed the maximum amount of money I could on my land 5 years ago. But that payment is very workable in our cash flow. My wife and I have investments in things like ethanol and the soybean plant in Volga and different other investments that we will live off of in our retirement. And Eli is going to end up getting saddled with that land debt when we're gone. But you know, the way that land continues to go up and the cost of rented land continues to go up, all of a sudden what started out to be a $180 an acre land payment seemed like a lot. In another, well, I hope I live 15 more years, $180 an acre land payment's going to seem pretty cheap. So that's the way we're going to make it work.
I'll make the payment.
What do you think, Eli, as far as how is it working for you as far as, are you like, you got the cattle, you rent stuff from Dad then to feed them cattle, or how is that equipment-wise?
So we own the cattle 50-50. We're splitting the pasture 50-50. He's still got his own cropland. I've got some of my own that I'm renting. I'm renting the equipment from him, but I'm also buying into the equipment. So it's kind of getting me transitioned into it as much as I can handle. So, you know, as the years progress, I'm going to keep getting more and more, and eventually we'll be 50-50 split on everything, and then eventually I will have it all. So it's working well.
So our situation, our farm's a corporation. So with that, it feels like we're all on a team farming for the farm instead of my dad's got his, I have ours, or this, that, or the other thing. So we all collect a wage from the corporation. And if my dad owns land personally, the farm rents it from him. Or if I buy land personally, the farm rents it from me. Obviously, if we've bought land, then you can manipulate some different things on cash rent to help make the payment and help cash flow and some different things like that. So the wage is there, and we're all invested kind of on the same mission of keeping the farm successful for the next generation. Now, we're just going through some formal succession planning with Keep Farmers Farming program with Alan Hoyer. And the big takeaway from him is everybody's situation is unique on what that succession plan should look like based on debt load, needs of the families involved, how many there are, and that tailors your plan. So a strategy that may work for anybody up here may need to be tailored differently to you. But I guess the strategy we're doing is right now we're a corporation, we all collect a wage, and then in time, as my dad maybe cycles back to more labor, and that wage will maybe still be there, or he'll just be a landlord. So it's kind of how we're doing it.
I got a question over here, you guys, if you're satisfied.
Okay, so when I talk to both older and younger generations, I'm noticing a trend as to why younger people decide to go regenerative, or why older people go to be or to get into the regenerative. So that's not really my question, because you guys have been in it a long time. The one question I would have or actually it's a two-part question, is one of the presenters said that he thought it was economics that steered people into it. I don't think that's the reason. Otherwise, everybody would, because the proof is in the pudding, right? What I'd like to know is, why do you think more people, or not all the people, or producers are getting into this more regenerative nature? And what is the one thing that all of us here can do, one thing that we can all do to help further move this movement ahead?
I remember back as a kid growing up, a young kid growing up, there's a lot of people that smoked. And all at once, people started recognizing, you know what? These cigarettes really aren't that good for us. And now, I'm not trying to belittle anybody in this room, but I wonder if there's anybody even in this room that smokes. I was a kid growing up. When I was 10 years old, probably 2/3 of the room did. And I think there's becoming a recognition that I don't like what I'm doing. And they're looking, they're searching. They'd like to do something different. And I think there's just a lot of people out there that are producers that if they could do it a different way, they would. And I think that's got a lot to do. Now, when you get to be my age, well, who cares anymore? But you know, when you're 40 years old and you've got children, these kind of things are, you're really thinking about, there's got to be another way. And I think that's playing into people being open, especially younger ones, to looking at doing it in a different manner.
One thing I'll add to that too is it's kind of uncomfortable to change. And most people are resistant to that. You want to continue down the path that's easy and been proven. But in a way, you may feel like you can't afford a change, but sometimes in the other sense, can we afford not to change? When you look at some of the way the shape of the land has degraded in areas. And that's kind of where we came from. It's not that what we were doing wasn't working. We were profitable, corn and soybeans, but visually looking at some acres and seeing yields kind of start trending down, well, we don't want our whole farm to be in CRP because that's all we can do to turn a profit. So we need to start making some changes now before it's a crisis. Now everybody hits that threshold and maybe realizes that at a different time, and then starts to kind of dial in the economics to it. And it's just a different way. And soybeans never used to really be raised around here. Look at it now. So is it an evolution? Is this the front of it? Probably, and will it catch on over time? Hopefully. As I just don't know if we can afford not to do it.
What I would say is, a lot of people don't have to change yet. You look at like Gabe Brown's story where he failed 4 years in a row and he had to do something different in order to keep the farm, and that's where he got on this journey. My story, Barry, is I wouldn't be on the farm if we didn't do what we're doing. So I think there's just a lot of producers that they aren't hurting that bad where they need to change so far, I guess. You got anything to add?
I do have something to add. So I think a lot of the farmers that I know in our area are operating on partially inherited land so that their true land costs are unknown to them. And when you said you don't think it's an economic thing, it is indeed an economic thing. It's just that there's an awful lot of folks that are afraid to sit down and hear the economics. Eli and I have tried to talk to some people about the fact that they calve in January and February, so they had to build a big barn and they have to put up a lot of straw so they can keep them calves alive in January and February. and then they wean early, so their calves never really learn how to eat grass. They have pastures that are the same pastures that have been in their family forever, and they do it the same way they've always done it, where they put 50 cows in this pasture for the summer and 50 cows in the next pasture and on down the line. And they're taking 7 acres per cow-calf pair. And they also cut silage every fall because they have to feed all winter, and they got to keep those cows in condition to calve in January. But if you tried to explain to them how they could do things differently and not have all of the expense, but probably make more money, they just don't want to hear it because it's scary. The idea that I'm 65 years old and maybe I should try something different. And your question was, what can each of us here today do to make a difference? And I would say that after you leave this place and go home, think of one farmer in your neighborhood that you think has an open mind and bring them next year. Wherever the conference is, bring them along, have them sit and listen, and then talk to them afterwards. And you might find out that the light went on.
Just a couple of thoughts. Somebody, I think Eli had said that some people don't have to change yet, and I think that's the bulk of it right there. Is if your land is paid for and you paying all your bills, there's not always much incentive to change, whether it's livestock or crops. I think it's the same. There's also, trying something different. You're also losing some of the safety nets, not just government safety nets, but the safety net of your society, your community in some sense. It's a lot more accepted that you fail conventionally than succeed unconventionally. Like, you're just more accepted in your community. If you did the same thing as everybody else and you failed, well, now you're one of us. But if you did something different and you succeeded, that can be seen as a threat. And I think the great thing about what I see like the soil health movement is it's gaining momentum to the point where you can't pick up a farm magazine without there being an article about cover crops anymore. It's in every single article or every single issue. Doesn't matter the time of year. There's something about cover crops. And so we're past the point, like, if the diffusion of innovation, where you have the early adopters, or you have like the pioneers that like come up with the ideas in the first place, then you have your early adopters that kind of try it out, and then you have this bell curve where, okay, now the majority has accepted that this is how we should do it. There's always the tail end. There's one producer in our county that still does spring wheat and summer fallow, and I don't think it's because he hasn't heard about cover crops or no-till. It's because he doesn't have to change, and he's on the tail end, right? So I don't think it's ever going to happen where everybody does all this stuff, but this movement is well on its way to being the norm. And I think things like farm visits and just an afternoon tour or whatever of your farm is I think that's the best way to get it in your community, or to build it up and make it more of a normal practice, where it's not, oh, we got to drive 3 hours to go see that cover crop tour. No, I got to drive 5 miles to go see the cover crop tour. Now suddenly it's, okay, this is in my context, and it's more accepted.
All right, way here in the back, guys.
So we just recently purchased a farm, and the farm has not been in the family at all. And so I guess my question would be, to build the quality of the soil the fastest, am I better off to work more towards the fertilizer aspect, or putting more towards cover crops money-wise? Because money is tight, and I want to build the quality of the soil as quick as possible, because previously it's been corn and soybean rotation, and there's a lot of erosion going on. And we have cattle, so we're integrating the livestock back into it, grazing them. This last year we planted a lot of millet and hayed that for feed, and then grazed that in the fall for the second crop. Am I better off to lean more towards my cover crops, or should I work more on fertilizer, I guess would be my question.
My advice is to concentrate on integrating livestock on every acre you can as you make the changes that are necessary to increase your soil health. But the fastest way to build the soil biology is through the manure that the cattle are going to put out on the land. So, you know, if you can afford it, pick one field at a time and plant it to a full season cover crop, and then graze it rotationally several times during the year and leave it over winter, and then plant green into it the next spring, one of the methods that we're talking about here at the conference. And that's your first field, and then you slowly transition everything to do that. And you're gonna have to do conventional fertilizer rates for a number of years, but you're also not gonna have a crash that you tried too much at once. You're a young guy, you've got a lot of years, it'll work.
Yes, the one thing I guess I would add to it is just get really good at the basics. Figure out how to raise good no-till corn, no-till soybeans. Figure out what small grain to add in the cover. We don't have livestock, so we don't have some of those at this time, you know, that some of those options. But everyone has the different ability to absorb different amounts of risk, and early on when we're just getting started and working capital is maybe a little lower than some of our established operations, you got to be dialed in on your numbers and do what's going to help keep your farm. Being a steward of the land, you also have to be a steward of your finances and you know, make sure you're doing what you can do to keep that in your operation lifelong ultimately. So hone in on the numbers.
I would tell you, I wouldn't disagree at all with what anybody has said here about it, but one of the most successful operations in our county is my wife. She's got a no-till garden for how many years now, Garnet? 8 years. So I started a club, Sell the Tiller Club, and she's been no-tilling everything. And so if you really want to see what you can do about soil health, for those of you that want to experiment, are wondering how you can get Dad convinced, why don't you do something you have total control over and quit tell your wife we're going to quit tilling the garden and let her no-till everything, all your food, and then watch what happens with your soil health. Garnet plants a pair of, I've tried to convince her to start using my old underwear, but she's still working on buying new Fruit of the Looms every year to plant. And it's fun to dig them up. You know, after 30 days, if you got soil biology, you got nothing left. You wouldn't want to wear them. But do fun things like that if you really want to see what can happen. And if you start on a small scale like you would in a garden, it's pretty easy then to convince, for those of you that are younger out here, to convince your dad, how about if we try something like this on 20 or 40 acres? And if you don't have cattle, maybe you got a neighbor that's got cows with that's producing a lot of manure. Maybe you got a big dairy or a big hog barn close by. See what you can do to get some of the fecal material from them if you're looking for ways to accelerate your soil health journey.
I would just add, go visit your local NRCS office and ask them about programs that you can be involved in, because they have some good cost sharing. It'll help you out, help you get started. Ducks Unlimited is one we've worked with before too. Farmers for Soil Health, that's a newer one. So there's a lot of folks out there that want to help you if you want to start this journey. I think the Soil Health Coalition might help you out too.
Yeah. Got a question right over here, you guys.
Do any of you work with family members that are not farming, but you rent their land? My parents are in the process of putting together their succession plan, and my brother farms with them right now. They have a beef cattle operation with corn, soybeans, oats, and alfalfa. And when they pass on, I will be inheriting 1 or 2 of the farms, and my brother will have most of the rest. But I'm wondering, as a potential future landlord, what are the best ways I can support him? He's been wanting to do some conservation, but activities like no-till and cover crops, but my father's not on board yet. So he's already asked me if I would have a problem with it, and well, I work for NRCS, so I don't have a problem with it. And I've been trying to give him some guidance that I use with my own customers. But he's got to make his own decisions. I can't make those for him. But as a future landlord, how can I support him as he's making some of these changes?
I would say a flex lease. So then when, to help alleviate some risk, so when he succeeds, you guys succeed together, and figure out what that base rent needs to be, on what you feel that what is fair, and then have some different triggers to kind of elevate that. So then if it fails, he's not paying where it needs to be. We do different flex leases on our farm, and it's nice because the landlord's invested on the success of the land. And it sounds like you already have the vision for the long-term approach that you'd like to see him deploy. So if you guys are on the same page with that, in time, hopefully revenue, profit increases for both of you. So I guess that would be a way to alleviate a little risk on the front end when he's getting started with it.
That's what we've done. So I rent farm ground from my grandma, and then also from my sister and her husband. And same thing. It's a reasonable cash rent that if it was just the cash rent, you'd say, oh wow, that's pretty cheap. I would say it's on the low end of cash rents, for our area. But then there's I forget if it's a 7 or 9% profit share. We just base that off of the spot price on the day of harvest. There's no way we're just hauling it into the elevator. And so then the marketing side of it, it's up to me on my bushels to try to get better than that if I can. But they're not susceptible to my poor marketing decisions. But again, there's some reward for them if the land is more productive or prices are higher. And I guess that's worked well for us too. And along with that, they retain the grazing rights if it's like corn residue, like crop residue that I graze. So if it's grazing corn stalks, they get paid 7 cents a day for every day I got a cow out there. And then if it's a crop that I plant specifically for grazing, that's a separate deal. And I don't do a whole lot of that. Anyways, that's how we have done it.
I've got a question for Alex, I guess, if I could ask it. Alex, I remember you and your dad at the Soil Health School, the first time I met you guys at the Soil Health School, and how excited, especially your dad, how excited he was. And just moving around and talking to everybody and just super excited. So I'm curious to know what, like in the evenings after Soil Health School, what kind of conversations does you and your dad have, and then, like, was it we're going to start this practice on this part of the farm, or how did you start, or what did you use the school for?
So after the soil health school, as you mentioned before, it's a fire hose of information. So you almost had to kind of come off that runner's high a little bit and kind of, okay, now what can I implement in the near term to make an impactful change? So we were raising corn and soybeans, and we've raised wheat in the past. So the excitement there, though, to recharge and start improving the acres we were operating on, just fire was just there. He witnessed that with my dad. My dad will make the comment now, he's having more fun farming now than he ever has. And so it was, how can we incorporate some of these things within the system that we already have? So that was no tilling. It's as simple as that. Leave the tillage tractor parked and start trying the no-till. There's times I still got to take the keys away from my dad when he gets a little antsy, but for the most part, he's very, very been on board with it, and it's been cool to see. And just the time savings alone that we have, I feel like, I've heard Brian Johnson say this before, I feel like it's almost farming is less stressful now, doing with it. And yeah, I mean, you guys are testaments to that too. You just do things a little differently, and you didn't realize how much time and stress were involved farming it the way you used to. And the good Lord's blessed us with good yields and stuff too. That's helped. We've had a good taste in our mouth kind of from the beginning, which has helped. We've had some train wrecks with raising rye and some different things like that, but you don't give up because you keep rye in the long-term prize. So seeing the older generation be excited about it is really, really cool to be a part of. And then lights the fire in me, and then hopefully in the future my children will have that same passion. And, it's lit the fire with our whole team on doing what we're doing. It's not just year to year anymore. It's a holistic approach on what can we do over the next few years to build a system that helps ultimately make us more profitable and more resilient to handle the ups and downs that agriculture throws at you. It's a lot more fun to have a tighter wave than these big peaks and valleys. So it's been a fun transition. And like I said, it's given our whole farm, our whole team a new sense of why we're doing what we're doing. Because before you just kind of did it. You just corn and beans flip flop, and you just kind of on an autonomy mode. And now it's just, well, let's keep doing what we're really good at. And now let's just start layering in some of these soil health principles to see if we can take it to the next level. And it's just a fun group to be a part of, and you surround yourself with like-minded people, and it's been a cool transition for us. And like I said earlier, we're very much in our infancy yet, and it's cool to see some of these individuals up here that have been doing it a long time and proving that it can be done. So
I guess one thing that I would say in response to that is, initially you think, all right, another school, another conference, another seminar. How long is it going to take me to unlearn him that stuff with all the new ideas? But what you find out is there's a lot of good things that come from these. And of course, I went through the same thing as my dad. The unfortunate part about it is he never came to these kind of schools like I do with Luke. But I know that is the response from some fathers whose sons are here, and the sons are wondering, what is it going to take to get Dad on board? And Dad's thinking, if I just dig my heels in long enough, maybe he'll forget about what he learned here.
I just like to, I had a train of thought and then it went away.
I'm going to take it away from
Fine.
you then. So I hear that same story about how the young guy went to college or went somewhere and he came home with ideas and Dad said, don't do that. It won't work. Well, in our situation, I'm the academic one. I got a degree at SDSU in biology, microbiology, and chemistry. And so my entire farming career, I've been reading as much as I could about all of this new stuff that is coming out. And it fascinates me. When I was in college, they thought there were 11,000 bacteria in the whole world. And now they realize that they missed it by a factor of 10,000. So when Eli starts getting excited about the stuff that I get excited about, that's when it's fun. He's on the X, formerly Twitter, with a guy called Lance from the Lower St. Croix. Anyway, this guy and his buddies have so much fun talking about new ideas, and then Eli tells me about them, and it's like, we'd really like to meet these guys. They're fantastic.
Yeah, it's just, I know eventually my dad will retire, but with the excitement we have, it's fun to just take it day by day. And you think of your neighbors who are farming, how many of them are excited to work with their dad or work with their son? I just think about the neighbors we have, and it's just there are very few that are like that, and we have the Soil Health Coalition to thank for that, and so many other entities. So.
We could talk for hours. I think we're at almost an hour and a half right now on this topic, but in closing, I'd ask each of the five of you, given our theme of legacy and transition and whatever term you want to apply to it, if you could assign a word or phrase to what you would like your generation to be remembered by in 50 years, what would it be? Kind of putting you on the spot here.
Stewardship. of your, this is our mission statement of our farm. Want to be stewards of our family, our faith, our resources, and our community, and leave everything better than we found it. So.
That's pretty hard to follow up on. But I this fall, I was at a conference and one of the speakers talked about a legacy versus an empire. And a legacy is something that's meant to outlive you. It's not built for you or around you. It's something that is like you may be part of building it, but it's built for the express purpose of living beyond you and not carrying your name necessarily. Whereas an empire that's all about you and it dies with you. And so I think that's what he just said about stewardship and leaving it better than you found it. And like I said, there's not a whole lot else to say other than it's the opposite of an empire. And so that's our challenge, is to be legacy builders / carriers and not empire builders.
I just want people to see how much fun we're having. We're having fun farming. Not everybody can say that. So
I think it's a realization and understanding of just how blessed we've been in our lives, in where we live, and the families we have, and the communities that we live in, and the opportunities that we've had that not everyone gets, and we need to make the best of what we have.
I would tell you this, I've gone to a lot of meetings in my life. Many times conservation groups are there, that they get up and give talks, and they talk about keystone species. And that might be the monarch butterfly, it might be Sprague's pipit, it might be green needlegrass. But for me, the keystone species is the cow. So a number of years ago, I created a phrase that I've used: no cow, no grass, no birds. You watch cow numbers, when you remove cattle from the landscape, a lot of bad things happen. So no cows, no grass, no birds.
Well, I think it doesn't get much better than that. No cows, no grass, no birds. So let's pay these guys off. And like you said, we were so excited to have this legacy panel. I remember in one of our board meetings when it got brought up, and we were going to have you guys sit back to back and try to get you kind of fighting a little bit. But it's just amazing to see the transition where I said it to you earlier, I think, Lyle, it's this. It works the same with your land, I think. You're given, and it's not holding on to. You're going at it with your just open and given. So thank you guys so much for being on the panel, and thank you for everything you do for soil health and for grasslands and for conservation and all around. So let's give them a round of applause one more time. And